Welcome back, everyone. This is MandoAllDay, back with another video. And in this video, I'll be doing an overview of DC vs. Vampires, a hardcover, All-Out War, Part 1. I'll be talking about a little bit of the story, the art, and of course, if it's worth your purchase or not. Before we get started, make sure you hit the subscribe button to not only support the channel, but to keep up to date and watch videos like this. So let's take a look in front of the dust jacket, the spine, the back, show a full spread image of the art. Really like this art piece right here. Alright, put it to the side, front of the book, the spine, the back, and I'll show you a full spread image of the art itself. You can see that. Alright, now let's take a look at what's inside. So, what is this book about? So, this book is broken down into two different parts. So, it has the main part, the main story, which is the All-Out War. And then it has other short stories that include Hunter #1 and other short stories with Nightwing and Batgirl. I won't be saying too much of the other short stories because they really are short stories. But just the gist of it, for the Batgirl one, she meets up with Gotham PD. And that's all I want to say, because if I talk about it more, well, it's going to spoil it. So there's that. For Damian one, essentially, if Damian is on a mission to revenge his father, I'm not going to say why he's doing that, because if you've not read the other story, and I don't want to spoil it, so there's that. And the other one is going to be the origins of Nightwing. I won't say too much, but if you read the other stories, you know what I'm referring to. So, if you want to know exactly what happens, or how Nightwing became Nightwing, then there you go, it's in this book. So, the main story. So, what is the main story about? So, Deathstroke teams up with the remaining heroes and villains to find the, I guess you can say, certain liquid that will help and eliminate the vampires. And that is the gist of this whole main story. It only collects 3 issues of the story. This is a part 1 hardcover. So, and I gotta say, even though it is a short story, I like the story. It's not amazing or great. It's like pretty cool and fun. Just like the other stories with the DC vs. Vampires, it's silly and over the top, and it's just having fun. And I like that. And same thing is on here, is that it's just fun and silly and over the top. And that's pretty much it. That's all I can say about the story, the main story, because there's only 3 issues, and I can't say too much, because if I do, well, it's going to spoil it. But I do enjoy it, though. I will say, though, the DC vs. Vampires Volume 1 and 2 were better written. This main story, it kind of gets dragged out a little bit sometimes, here and there. But for the most part, though, it's fine. Like I said, it's a very simple premise. And again, it's just Deathstroke teaming up with the remaining heroes and villains. They're on a mission to get this liquid, which I won't talk about because I'll spoil it. And something happens along the way, and that's pretty straightforward story. Nothing crazy or amazing. But I still enjoyed it. I still had fun with it. Now, the pacing of it is above average. There are some very, very few moments that does dip like around the average, but for the most part, it's going to be above average. The short stories, though, those are very, very quick. Those are above average, so that's fine. The art is good. The art is going to be mainly just black and white, or I should say black, white, gray with a red accent. The only story that has color, which you've seen, is going to be the Hunter one, the Damian one. All the other stories are all just like this, which is going to be black, white, gray, and of course with the red accent. And I think the art's fine. Unfortunately, the art, since it is colored like this, sometimes it gets kind of messy, and I can't really tell, like, wait, who's fighting who's saying what. And so it's not a bad thing. It's just something that you kind of have to really look into, be like, okay, who's saying what? Wait, who's this here? Like, hopefully that makes sense. It's not bad. It's just something that I kind of bother me a little bit. The paper quality is glossy, which I always liked, but it defeats the purpose of having it glossy because, well, it's mainly just red accent with black, gray, and white, so it doesn't really pop. I mean, the red does pop with the gloss, but it's usually, you want, for glossy paper, you want more colors, and unfortunately, the glossy paper doesn't really benefit on here. It's very welcome, but it's kind of like, okay, why this book have the glossy? Why not other books that I've read that are matte paper? Those should have glossy because they're more colorful and bright. Do you need to have prior knowledge? Not necessarily, because this main story itself it references to what happened. This is during the DC vs. Vampire story, so it's not the ending of it. So if you know how that book ends or the story ends, then you know, which I'm not going to say. But for this particular story, it's during that time. And do you need prior knowledge? Not really. You can be reading this, you'll be perfectly fine, but you may be a little lost. It's okay, why is this character like this? What's going on? So, but is it required? No, you still have a good time with it. But I would definitely recommend reading the DC vs. Vampire stories because, one, they're fun, and also, two, they're written very well. Now, overall, what I think about the story, honestly, I like the story. It's pretty straightforward by the numbers, but it's fun. This whole premise of DC vs. Vampires, it's silly and over the top, but it is fun, and I'm really enjoying it. And so, the question is, would I recommend it? I'll break it down like this. If you've been reading DC vs. Vampire story, and you like it and you enjoy it and you want to know more about it, definitely get this book. You're going to have a great time, just like I did, and you'll thank me later because I don't want to see too much of the story. If you've read DC vs. Vampires and you're kind of like, maybe, maybe not, then definitely check it out. I think you're going to have a good time with this book. Just have your expectations accordingly because the writing on here isn't as fluid as the other one, because some of the writing on here can be a little janky here and there, but it's still good nonetheless. If you read DC vs. Vampires and you were not into it at all or didn't get your attention, then definitely skip this book because you're not going to like it. So overall, though, what I would give DC vs. Vampires hardcover All Out War Part 1, I give it a thumbs up. I really enjoy this story, and I really like this whole premise of DC vs. Vampires. It is silly and over the top, but it's a lot of fun. And sometimes in comics, you need just to have fun. So to me, once again, I give DC vs. Vampires hardcover All Out War a thumbs up for me. Let me know what you guys think. Have you read this book? Do you plan on reading this book? Leave it in the comment section below. As always, make sure you hit the subscribe button to not only support the channel, but to keep up to date and watch videos like this. Then includes an overview of DC vs. Vampires hardcover All Out War Part 1, and on to the next one.